get underway. All right, welcome to our August webinar here on the risks and costs of your own SMSF templates. So this is a practically focused session to, I guess, identify this growing need for compliance-based documents, because we are seeing an ever-growing number of events that are occurring within the SMSF framework from ongoing legislative change, and therefore off the back of these changes and an increased level of surveillance from the regulator, and then naturally the flow on for auditors, we are seeing generally this heightened interest in the use of SMSF templates. And I want to break this topic down for you today to help understand the ways in which we are seeing people put these templates together. In particular, those firms that maybe for a long time have done this and are now starting to confront challenges around time, staffing resources, and the utilization of that time may mean that we need to look at alternative solutions. And a lot of these sessions that we now run are coming from conversations that we are having with other firms, and those firms are then naturally going through this journey to come to the conclusion that there is a better way in doing this. And you can probably see on my t-shirt, there is a smarter way. So what are we actually going to cover here today in our session? So we're going to look at the current state of play and the practitioners' challenges. So the challenges that we are hearing from you with SMSF documentation. We're going to look at this cost-benefit trade-off that we see with self-preparers. And as we go through, we're going to share with you a case study with investment strategies in particular, but this can be transposed into any type of document that we are seeing and having conversations with on a regular basis that becomes the tipping point as to why people then move into a subscription. I want to just raise with you some of the compliance areas that I see that are in focus in the current year. And therefore, as a potential self-preparer of these documents, or even just having clients in this space, you need to be aware of the documentation that may be required to support decisions inside those SMSFs. We'll then move into a little bit more about why people choose us as a partner, in essence, in their business around the provision of these SMSF documents. We'll explore when that subscription makes sense and those common pathways that we see practitioners go down, that then they go, actually, this actually now does make sense to me. And then we'll have a wrap up and next steps and any questions that you may have as well. So a lot of this is about naturally coming back to, well, why would I be contemplating such a change from what I'm doing in my firm? And it does come down to purely things about time. Time is money, and therefore the more that we can drive profitability in our business through the saving of time and more efficiency, the better it is. And then ultimately it comes back to the fact that, do we have the confidence either internally or with our partners to help best manage the risk and leverage opportunities that we have within our SMSF client base as well. So I wanted to share with you. So one of the things in a survey that we did off the back of a webinar on the Hill and Zuda High Court decision in June this year, we had several hundred people online, and we had over 100 people complete the survey. And one of the questions that we actually asked was around the need for documentation. And what is interesting here in the response is that there is a recognition that the need for documentation in the SMSF space with your clients is increasing. And 1 in 4 nearly believe that there has been a sizable shift in the increase of the need for documentation. So again, this is something that I'm not saying just for the sake of saying. This is the body of evidence here is supporting the fact that those that are working with SMSF clients, the expectation of the regulator and the gatekeeper, the auditors and so forth, means that what we have been doing in the past in many instances is going to no longer be sufficient as we move forward with the ongoing compliance requirements and the advice process with our SMSF members. So where are we currently at in the provision of SMSF-based documents? So what we have seen is this kind of historical gap in the provision of what I call technically accurate SMSF documents. So yes, there are sort of generic things, compliance kits. There may have also been a reliance upon SMSF software to deliver these. But what we have seen over time is this increased need, and therefore there has been a gap in the evolution of documentation being available for trustees. Now, what has transpired over the past decade or so is the fact that we have this increase in focus on documentation. In particular, if we think about it in a legal context, decisions of courts looking at the trail of documentation in play. If we think about changes of trustee, we think of deed upgrades, we look at binding death benefit nominations. There are an element of documents there that we know have already been challenged and tested in court, and lessons that have transpired from it. That Hill and Zuda webinar is a good example of just where the attention to detail has come around documentation. But equally, we're seeing this flow through in a compliance context, as I said before, around auditors requesting more information and managing their own risks that they have themselves throughout that audit process. Now, that has transpired because of the expectation of the regulator, and again, the risk that has been imposed on the auditor to say that to ensure that we have compliance with SIS, compliance with tax laws, we want to see more information than we had ever seen before. Market valuations is a really good example. Investment strategy requirements. These are all things over the past few years that we have actually seen auditors go, nope, you need to give us more information. The requirements of the regulations are quite clear, and the evidence that we need to be able to support those decisions means that you need to increase the documentation that needs to be provided to support the legislative landscape of those particular events. Now, they are just two of a growing number of issues that we need to be across. Now, where has that gap initially come from? The initial gap has tried to be solved through our SMSF providers, and they've been there to support practitioners with templates. But the reality again here is that they are more generic in the scope. They're not there designed to marry up to the trust deed that you have that governs the operation of that fund. So therefore, it's why we have seen partners like BGL with us, or BGL partnering with us, to say, actually, you know what, we recognize that some of our clients are going to need something that goes beyond the scope of the generic framework that we do provide currently to our clients, and ensuring then that we can get that alignment that we need to a fund deed and go beyond the scope of, in some instances, of what we want to focus on. And therefore, as things evolve in a legislative context, we're going to rely on you to provide that to our clients. So BGL to Smarter SMSF as a good example, rather than us having to continue to focus on the documentation piece. That is not core to what we do. So therefore, we will partner with different providers to do that as a solution. And you've seen that across actuarial certificates, across deed providers and so forth, within the different SMSF software that is out there and available today. And the other thing that has then transpired, and this even goes back to when I was fully in practice and we were managing hundreds of funds, that we had this kind of juggling of chargeable time versus non-chargeable time to be able to create all the documents that we needed for SIS compliance purposes. And again, the reason why we were doing that is because the existing tools that were available, if we think about it inside the SMSF software, weren't sufficient or weren't aligned to the deed, and therefore we're endeavoring to fill that gap to ensure that we had alignment. So it might have been around pensions, it may have been around investment strategies. So the challenge here wasn't about the technical competency that sits inside the firm, but rather the practical challenges and therefore the efficiency and effectiveness of doing it this way, because we are not necessarily going to be recovering the time that we would be putting into such a process given the competitive landscape of the industry. So from a practices point of view, these are the challenges that we are currently seeing today. So we know that keeping up to date is a critical function of working as an SMSF practitioner. So are you dedicating the right and appropriate amount of time into your own development and that of the team to keep that currency of knowledge up to date? And that's why at Smarter SMSF, we deliver not only web-based training, we've just completed our SMSF Day events around the country. There are a range of tools that you now have available to you, our SMSF Foundations course, another, that ensures that you and your team can keep up to date in an efficient way across a broad number of SMSF issues. So then it comes back to risk. So how are we managing that risk in our firm, and then therefore the risk of the client? So we have a compliance issue that we need to ensure we have complied for our client, and making sure that they comply not only mitigates their risk, but mitigates your risk in the firm as well. So therefore, what are we doing in this space to ensure compliance that will satisfy the audit process year on year? And what we're doing needs to be done efficiently. So how can we save time? How can we save money in undertaking these tasks in a faster way without compromising on the quality of what we need to do to ensure that fund compliance? How can we leverage technology within our business to the fullest extent to enable us, again, to do this as efficiently as we possibly can? And if we are not going to be doing that ourselves, when we are making decisions within our organization, we want to ensure that we are choosing partners that enable us to profitably enhance our existing client relationships, but gives us the peace of mind to ensure that who we are working with is at the top of their game when it comes to self-managed super funds. And again, that becomes a key reason why many businesses choose us. So how are you currently managing the preparation of various SMSF pension and compliance-based documents? This is not a conversation around legal documents. We can't prepare those legal documents ourselves, I guess, in an internal sense. You would be utilizing the services of a Smarter SMSF to be able to create, say, a legal document like a new fund, or a deed upgrade, or a change of trustee, LRBA, whatever the case be. We're talking more specifically around those pension and compliance-based documents that you are either getting generically, potentially from your SMSF software, or you may be internally creating a solution that you transpose across all of your clients. So if you are doing that, and you are what I'd call a self-preparer, what you need to understand here is this cost-benefit trade-off. So what are the elements or functions in here that we need to analyze and assess to determine the cost of that, and therefore the opportunity cost of doing that compared to an alternate solution? So when we think about an event or a piece of legislation that may have just been introduced or there has been amendments to, if we think about the 1st of July 2022, there's been a number of legislative changes, and there continues to be even beyond that 1st of July when we think about some downsize or extension changes down to 55 from 60. But it requires knowledge and research. So there is initially an absorption of time around the research, the understanding of the law, not only reading the law, looking at the explanatory memorandums, all these things, along with the impacts that come after that in ATO rulings, other guidance, relationship back to the fund's deed. So you're spending a reasonable amount of time initially to kind of set the foundations of what needs to be done then. And then for you, it then says, well, okay, now that we know and we've got our skill set to this point, we now need to be able to create particular documents some particular precedent document templates that deal with the different combinations, because quite clearly one client that has this issue is going to absorb a huge amount of cost in your business to do so. But applying this across many clients, we are therefore going to have different combinations: individual trustees, corporate trustees, 1 director, 2 director, 6 directors, 5 individual trustees, whatever the case may be. So it requires some combinations. And then we need to think about, well, how do we kind of scale this up? So is there anything internally that allows for us to go beyond simple a Word document? And therefore, is there some sort of technology or something that we can do that will allow us to automate and optimize the preparation time of that particular documentation inside our firm? Now, once we get to that point, we've kind of done all the, what I'd call the background work. Then it comes into, well, now what we need to do is we need to actually apply this across a multiple of clients. However many clients are impacted by this particular document that we have created. And again, there will be a multitude of documents that we will need to deal with through the year, so we can multiply that out by the multiple of clients, by the multiple of documents, and you can just see how quickly this actually all grows. And then once we've gone through that process, there may then be further review and maintenance, so time each year potentially to ensure ongoing compliance with the law and the documents that would need to be updated accordingly as well. So I'm going to go through a case study shortly with you that allows you to understand the impact of those 5 key areas, and then how you actually need to attribute that out when you compare it to something like a document subscription with Smarter SMSF. So what are some of the areas that we are seeing in this 2022-2023 financial year or income year? And that obviously goes back to our 2022 tax return and then into the current year ordinarily. So we are seeing a continual level of growth in the use of our commencement and management tools of income streams. Okay, so pension commencement documentation, there's certainly a growth in our perspective. We can see of those that are creating pension documents that are more aligned than ever before to the fund's deed. Now, that not only relates to the pension commencement, we're currently doing some work that will give you the opportunity to choose whether you are starting with an unknown balance, or whether, and therefore having a written request and then follow up thereafter, or alternatively, you can, as we currently have, you'll be able to simply start it off the back of an oral request. And in both ways, you are not having to backdate documents like you would see out of many of the SMSF software documentation, whereby you're saying, well, yeah, the pension started at 1 July and this was the value and away we go, which technically is not correct. Now, other things like our above minimum pension election. So those of you that may have been at our SMSF days recently, we spoke about the differences now in the pecking order of how you might be electing to treat those above minimum pension amounts. And again, there is an opportunity here to use some discretion in how you produce the documentation based upon these 1 July 2022 changes. We've seen the ECPI choice decision legislation now take effect for the 2021-2022 year. So if there is that decision being made, there is no formal election, but there is requirements to document those decisions. So again, have you done the documentation to support that? Investment strategies and regular reviews, we're seeing more and more kind of literature come out to support that. It was our largest document that was generated over the last 12 months, but we're seeing regular reviews now form part of the ongoing framework in why we would need to document. And again, expect auditors to be asking questions. Superstream, money coming in, money coming out. Audit issue again this year. So how are you going to evidence the fact that it complied with all of the requirements of Superstream for the year to be able to support that audit process? Market valuation requirements, and again, evidencing the body of work that has been done to support those decisions and ownership of those assets. And one I just added in because we've seen probably 5 or 6 requests in the last month where incapacity is becoming a growing problem with SMSF trusteeship, and therefore making sure that we can facilitate the change of trustee where a member is under a legal disability. So what we try and focus on at Smarter SMSF for our members is to tap in and leverage the specialist skills and technology that we've built here that you can then utilize in your business that allows you to efficiently and leverage that technology to build current and compliant SMSF documents. So tap into the knowledge and tap into the technology to ensure that you do what you do and focus on what you ultimately do best. So the question then for you becomes, how often is this then occurring in my practice over a year, or then you can extrapolate that out over multiple years. So is there ongoing maintenance required to the SMSF documentation within your firm? If there is, well, how many new templates do you actually need to now contemplate for the current year? Or are you simply going about it in a way that as and when it comes, we'll then look to create it? And again, that may not be the most efficient way of doing it, because you're saying the time costs that it will take me to do that for that one client, we have no understanding as to whether we will recover all of the time that is required, because it will maybe only apply to one client, or it might actually apply to 5, 10, or 15 clients. So how many new templates need to be created? How many of the current templates that you have need to be continually managed each year? So what updates do we need to do? And therefore, again, how many clients do we know are going to be impacted by these amendments that we need to make? Are they then remaining aligned to the deeds that we use or deed we use in our firm? So naturally, the fill-in of that process, how much time therefore is being spent on these tasks around new documents and updated documents that need to be done, and then how much impact does that then have on the firm? So what's the opportunity cost within the firm where you may have senior managers, owners of the business with that more higher level of knowledge and expertise need to be spending time going through this process, then applying a top-down approach in the delivery of that back into the firm. So what we are trying to achieve here is we're trying to, from a top-down approach, using Smarter SMSF as the top to apply it down, and then that information will flow up, because you can have more graduate style accountants or other accountants in there actually undertaking that work, and then allowing for the manager, business owner, and so forth to review it with the confidence that you know that Smarter SMSF as the provider is across all of the technical aspects around the preparation of those documents. So again, how much impact is this having on time? And what is therefore the opportunity cost that we lose as a result of having to go through this? And the other thing that we are seeing in the marketplace is understanding, well, what if we actually lose specific skills within our business? So if a staff member leaves, how do we fill that void, and how do we manage that risk in our firm if those specific skills are lost at that sort of manager level or potentially above? And ultimately, it does come back to how do we better resource plan all of these things. So within our business, when we build these documents, subject to the complexities that sit within these, if we look at something like the templates that we've created with our rollovers in and rollovers out to comply with SuperStream, I mean, we're spending at least 20 plus hours creating the templates. Now, but what sits behind that is the legislative understanding. That has naturally been built up over some period of time and actually hasn't included that there. But we would be going through and going, okay, well, there's requirements for rollovers in, there's requirements for rollovers out. Is it partial commutation? Is it a partial rollover? Is it a full rollover? Is it a death benefit income stream rollover? Is it a superannuation income stream rollover? Is it going to another SMSF? Is it going to an APRA fund? Has it come from an SMSF? Has it come from an APRA fund? So it's the combination of these things that then you as a firm or as a professional can go, actually, we've got a rollover that's leaving the fund. We know it's this and it's this and it's this, and we can produce that document seamlessly and efficiently and then we can provide that information to the auditor that will assist in satisfying compliance with Division 6.5 of the SIS regs with the superstream laws. So that is the way in which we need you to be thinking about, are we or do we have the tools that we need to ensure that when these events transpire, we can do this as efficiently and effectively as possible. Now, when it comes to contemplating why you might choose a business over another, it does then come down to what I call depth of knowledge. So one of the things that we get asked quite regularly is well, why don't you sort of tap into non-SMSF assets and into HR and into all these other weird, wonderful things? For me, it comes back to this issue of depth of knowledge over breadth of knowledge and content. So what we are focused on is really level 3 and level 4 thinking that you can see here. So it's the ability to be able to pull apart a piece of legislation and then construct things around that legislation. We can critique that legislation and go, well, what impact does this actually have? We can develop arguments. So how can we use this? And what's the effect of doing this in a particular way? And from that, the level 4 thinking that really sets us apart in many instances is, well, what do we need to do here? So how do we design this? What are we creating? How do we build connectivity into our integrations? How do we apply different concepts? So what's the relationship to this next thing and the thing that follows thereafter? And this slide here just gives you a demonstration of the different areas around the different levels of depth versus breadth. So what you'll see right across a level 1 reproduction, so those that go, yep, we offer 200 documents or whatever the case may be. But the reality is that the level of depth and understanding of these different areas is much different to a specialist firm like Smarter SMSF from a self-managed super fund point of view. So even if we go across to the very right around SIS compliance, you are just going to be getting generic templates. Some of them won't even cover this sort of stuff because that's not really what the core is. They've come out of legal firms and so forth, and they don't necessarily understand the requirements and therefore provide things around extensions beyond pension commencement documentation. So adding reversionaries midstream, dealing with minimum pension elections. You may see some generic templates. So at a basic concept level, and again, this is really where the SMSF software providers sit, they will put in generic templates that will kind of tick off what the requirements are within the regulations. But it's only once you get to there and you understand that there is more within the legislation than just a generic document there. What you're then doing is you're seeing the breakout of these things. So again, that above minimum pension is a really good example there because the law allows us to do this, but only on the basis that we do that. So therefore, we need to produce a document that allows us to do this. And we can then train and support you by helping you understand why it is needed and when you actually need to do it. And then that level 4 extended thinking is to actually say, well, now that we know what we need to know, how do we kind of put this on steroids? So how do we drive integrations? How do we drive efficiency? And the type of firms that are much larger, administrators and so forth, the feedback that we constantly get with this is they want a consistent and efficient process. Once the due diligence is done around the documents and the quality of the documents, it's efficient and it's effective and it allows us to repeat at volume and do that in the best way that we can possibly do. So let's go back to this little analysis that we've got around a self-preparer. So this is a common scenario that we see. And David, who's our sales and account manager here, business development, so he actually sort of talks to these regularly with people. So we've got James, the partner, who looks after about 100 funds within the accounting business. And from an investment strategy point of view, and again, you can transpose this with investment strategy to pension or any combination of documents. But we know that investment strategy over the last few years has been an area of interest, and therefore the expectation of the documentation we need has increased. So we have charge rates here, and there's been a decision in the firm that it would be best for us to improve the investment strategy requirements because the auditor is imposing this on us to ensure that we have got all of the aspects of SIS Reg 409 covered. So we've got some charge rates there of the senior staff and the partner who are typically the ones that are going to be doing all that heavy lifting initially. So what's the cost here? And this is where we go back to those 5 key areas. So if we assume there's about 12 hours of work between the senior staff and the partners, we've got a template build process. The scalability, we're not sure, so we're just going to ignore that for this. They might not be spending any further money other than the fact that we need to do it inside a template. We then have the client prep work, and we have an average cost per fund, 1 hour at an average cost of 150. So it might be more junior or administrative staff undertaking that work. And then, of course, we're seeing ongoing review requirements and so forth. So we actually then have a review and maintenance function in here that we need to build out. So what we can see here is that the total cost, and I use cost, it's not a wage cost. It's a cost though, because it's an opportunity cost here to the firm. If those individuals weren't doing that work, would they therefore be doing chargeable work? And therefore it is an opportunity cost. So we've nearly got $30,000 here of opportunity costs that we need to try and recover. So therefore, on 100 clients, our break-even point is going to be a $300 fee to produce that investment strategy report templates for those clients. Now, when you transpose that into Smarter SMSF being utilized in this, and this is again where the numbers then clearly start to stack up, rather than spending the time in here around the knowledge research and in particular the building of the templates, what we're now doing is we're spending time doing the due diligence within our firm to ensure that we're happy with the documentation that is available. So there might be $1,000 of time there. We would look at a subscription package that would enable us to leverage this. Yes, you could potentially look at this on a pay-as-you-go basis, but quite clearly the costing points are going to be substantially different. So you'd be looking at, in a BGL client sense, you're looking at probably $10,000, potentially up to $15,000 outside of that when you look at our investment strategy at $165 plus GST. So then what we're doing, because we will be using technology, so we've got the scalability that is a question mark here, we've got the scalability in the system here. What was initially an hour is now only going to take us half an hour. So we now have a 250% improvement in the cost to the firm because you've been able to leverage the specialization of our business and the technology in there so that you can then focus on the other things that are important in your business. So rather than having a break even at around $300 in an opportunity cost sense, what we're now doing is if the firm still charged that $300, it's going to actually provide an $18,000 profit for the project or $180 per fund. So it is an important thing for you to be thinking about and going, well, look, yeah, we might have 50 of these documents through the year. And it's not just investment strategies, but it's pensions, it's investment strategies, it's ECPI choice, it's downsizer contribution, it's a whole range of things. So if we try and extrapolate that into this sort of table and go, well, how much time are we going to have to spend on these things to be able to produce these documents? And then we've got to prepare them. Well, how much is that going to actually cost us at the exclusion of doing other things, being able to keep that work moving inside of your organization? And what you can see in this example is that there is a 250% improvement simply by choosing a Smarter SMSF subscription to do so. So we do have different levels of subscriptions to suit the different sizes of businesses. So you can start at as little as 25 documents per annum, either at $180 a month or $1,800 per annum. So this would suit smaller firms. In some instances, what we find is some firms that even expect that they might be using more might just start the journey. So you might start with 50. And therefore, and what we do actually find is that they chew through those pretty quickly. So you can then upgrade. So you can go into that next pack at any point in time. So there is scope to be able to vary the level of subscription that you need. So again, it's an understanding of the number of documents that you need. And David here has built some tools to actually help work through that with you. So if you are thinking about this off the back of today's session, we have got an offer that we've actually made available, through our SMSF days, that you can sign up and you will get your first month free. So you won't be, you're in essence going to be billed in arrears, and you get the benefit of that first month free and start to produce the documents that you need and get comfortable with it using the integrations that we have with BGL and Class, and in the near future, Supermate as well. So we have a coupon code there. If you do an annual subscription, you will simply buy that annual subscription. You will pay for that up front, but we will then make the adjustment in the system. So today is the 11th of August. If you bought it today, then the renewal won't happen until the 11th of September, 2023. So this offer is available until Friday, the 22nd of August. And if you've got any questions, you can get in contact with David and he will go through that with you. So again, why would a subscription here make sense? So again, if we look at this in the context of the subscription, it's not just saying here, do I need 50 documents? Do I need 100 documents? Because as you can see in this example, we've got a situation where Jackie only needs about 160 documents. So we have this create to 50 pack that is available. And the first thing that Jackie might think is well, I'm not going to need 250 documents. It's not about the utilizing the full value of that package, because it comes into an understanding, well, what does the average price per document actually reduce to compared to if we're buying these on a pay-as-you-go basis? So on a pay-as-you-go basis, if the average cost per document here was going to be about $200, then on a PAYG basis, it's going to cost her 32 grand plus GST. Now, on a 250 pack, we're looking at $8,000 or $800 a month. So she's reducing the average cost to $60 per document for 160 orders. So therefore, she's going to have an additional 90 documents if she has a requirement to use them during the year. So she's going to be ahead anyway, even on the basis that she only uses 160. So by comparison, in ordering via a subscription, the break even here would be completing about 48 documents on a PAYG basis. So she then gets over 200 additional through that process. So it's about understanding the cost in your firm, but the average cost that you might be paying based upon our PAYG pricing, and then running those numbers. And that's what David can actually help you to understand and put something together for you before you then would make a decision. So what we're seeing quite clearly now over the last 12 to 18 months through this sort of significant growth that we've had is how firms end up on a path to subscription. So we did run a session in June, and there is a link there if you do want to go and watch that. But what we are seeing are two journeys. First journey is there's a specific needs subscription. So they're actually saying, I need to come in, we need to do 100 deed upgrades, and what's the best way to do it? So the best way to do it is to get 100 pack and away you go. But the other thing that we see, and we have probably for every 10 PAYG members that we have, we've probably got 1.5 create document members. So the journey that most people go through is that they will kind of dip their toe in the water first before they begin to swim. So this second journey is what we call this pathway to membership. And it's, you will hear from us on an ongoing basis as to when we think it might be appropriate to look at that journey. And again, David's done a lot of work around this to help identify, that you've ordered 5, that you've ordered 10 documents. And therefore the analysis is you would be better going down this path than this path. So we have a broad range of real life case studies that we have shared inside that session. So if you do want to find out more, you can click on that link when we send this through to you in our member and our knowledge base. You can go under the webinars tab, and there's a range of these that we add in there for you to access. So again, why do people choose us? It's the award-winning expertise. So the technical expertise, we are recognized for this as an accredited educator, but also the awards that we have won in the past as well. Clearly, integrations that we have with key SMSF software, BGL and Class, as I've said, Supermate is on its way. But you can also, we are the chosen provider within Simple Fund 360 to order documents directly through there as well. So the firms that we work with, they are one of really a couple of categories. So they are administrators and specialist firms. They have divisions that are set up. They have higher volume. So the things that we get told is it must be what you do is industry best practice, and we will read it to an inch of its life and ensure that we are comfortable that it complies and what's the framework in which you manage and control this on an ongoing basis. And then once that has been done, we want a consistent and efficient experience each and every time. The other side of the ledger is we have general practitioners with some level of expertise, but what they want is they want the confidence. Am I doing this correctly? Can you ensure that if I do this document, I'm not going to have any issues with the auditor and we're going to comply? So it's I want to kind of outsource the expertise to you, please, because this is not what I do each and every day. And then once that confidence has been built, it's then to go, okay, well, yeah, look, let's try and now leverage a bit of this technology that we've got, but it's not at the forefront. The forefront is I need to manage my client risk. I need to manage my risk. I need you to help me manage those risks internally. And we do put a fairly strong focus on being able to support you through our ticketing and telephone and so forth. And many of you that have been online would potentially attest to the responsiveness that you get from us around these things. So our platform, a little bit, there is, as I said, a strong focus on automation to be able to create these documents in an efficient and effective way. There is legal support behind this. So Hill Legal, Chris Hill, who I've worked with for many years, who has replaced Ian Glenister here, who has recently retired, to deal with specific legal issues that need to be taken offline. So deficiencies that require rectifications in deeds and so forth. We use Amazon Web Services. So all of the data, documents that are stored and stuff are stored within Australia. We have different functionality. So for the subscriptions, we have primary and secondary users. So the firm has the subscription, you have an admin level person is the primary, and then that person can then see all of, and shortly we'll be able to add different users in and then those users will be able to apply against the subscription counter that you have within your organization. And then the primary person will be able to have oversight on saved orders and completed orders of everyone inside that organization. Our payments on a PAYG basis, but also for membership with the subscription itself, and then orders like company and corporations, we do accept most of the common forms of payment method there. We do naturally have SSL certificates for secure delivery. Orders are then done through an email process. You not only get the email confirmation, the document is ordered and is available on the completed orders site. You will also get emails to confirm that order and details of the submission of what you have ordered as well. There is functionality for saved and potential resetting of orders. We have tooltips to help understand and interpret what we're trying to ask you based upon the law, fully blown ticketing system for timely response and for you to track those queries, and a knowledge base that gives you access to the sample documents, how-to videos, setting up your integrations, and much, much more. Okay, so we go through a process each and every year with both BGL and Class about our security standards and a questionnaire to deal with the ATO's operational framework. So we do go through robust process each and every year to ensure that we adhere to, in essence, what is required as a partner with both of those SMSF software organizations. So to wrap up, I guess the question here to be asking yourself is, do we have any existing challenges in our business with the templates that we currently utilize. So if we do, how is this type of work that we're doing currently being done within your business? So are you relying on internally one-on-one people? Does that create risks in its own right? Is it being done consistently because you might have multiple partners in the firm and each partner has a very different way in which they operate? So therefore there's a lack of consistency, but still a business risk. Understanding the level of team member that's undertaking this work. So is it a top-down approach or is it a bottom-up approach to how this work is being done? And therefore that impacts the cost and the potential timing of that work being done. So therefore, understanding that time, effort, and energy creates an opportunity cost. So how have we measured that on a creation basis of these documents and then maintaining those as well? And finally, how can we scale up what we do? So do we have technology available that allows for this to be efficient? And if you do see this part of the work that you do as being a profit center in your business, then there is clearly some thinking that you need to do around the way in which you approach these type of documents. So that is it for today. So thank you for being a part of today's session. As I say, and as my t-shirt says, there is a smarter way. We do have a range of upcoming sessions, both from our CPD calendar. So our green dot that you can see there is business real property. Our SMSF days that we've just finished, we are launching as an online course. So that will be available in a bit over a week's time. And then we do have a range of other sessions that we are running, again, from product demos and technical updates that you should be aware of, that you can always go to our smartersmsf.com/events page. That will keep you up to date. You can download a calendar there as well, but you can then also register for these events. So thank you once again for being a part of today's session. If you do have any other questions that you'd like to ask, you can ask those now. Otherwise, get in contact with us. We'll be more than happy to have a discussion with you further on many of these issues that we've covered today. Thank you and bye for now.